In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask
Taylor,
what you
we're back.
can do for your country.
We're back. Oh my gosh, you know what I did? I'm just looking at my emails. I joined the Learned League. Learned League. Do you know what that is?
No, obviously.
It's like a thing like to get into. I guess it's Learned League. I'm like the stupidest person here. So it's a like a really hard trivia group that you have to get invited into, and you like do these like trivia battles against other people, and you have to like give points to things and like everything. And I was like, oh, I've always wanted to be in this. And then this dude at work was like, I have an invitation. Anybody want it? And I was like, yes, I'm gonna kill it. I am so phenomenally bad at this. It is unfucking believable. I'm like number 24 out of 25 in my group for the past, I've only been doing it for a week. I'm just so bad at it. It's really wild.
For trivia,
Yeah, it's like so hard. Like
you know a lot of pop culture, and that's what most trivia is.
it is. I know a lot of trivia. I have on my resume that I'm really good at trivia. And I think I'm really good at it. And this is humbling to say the least.
Is it like fantasy sports, but for nerds?
Kind of.
Learned League. Okay. I'll
Maybe
look that
Learned
up.
League. I think I might be saying it wrong. Because
Well, I
I'm
think it's the same spelling.
it is. And so now I just feel dumb.
No, I think I say learned.
Okay, great.
So we're both dumb. Do you want to introduce us?
Yes, hello. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We're the podcast that tells you history's most notorious disasters and epic failures 2 times a week. It is our second show of the week, and I am Taylor, joined by Fars.
I'm Fars. I'm here. I'm happy.
Great. Okay. Last night I had this idea and I laughed so hard for like 15 minutes at myself. I want to bet that you can't guess who I'm going to talk about. And I was like, I'm willing to bet like $1,000 that Fars will not guess this. Like I will Venmo you $1,000 right now. But then I'm like, I'm not a risk taker, so I'm gonna bet you $100.
Okay.
If you get this right, I'll Venmo you $100.
Okay. What's the, do I get clues or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who was our 29th president?
McKinley?
No. I'll Venmo you $5 if you can tell me who was the president after Wilson.
Cleveland?
Cleveland is not a word. So
No, Grover Cleveland. What did you think I said?
you say Cleveland with a
I
cleek?
said Grover Cleveland.
Okay, no. So I could have bet $1 million that you wouldn't guess that. I wouldn't have gotten it either. It was hard, but I was laughing at like trying to make you bet. And then I was like laughing at how scared I was to have to possibly give you $1,000 if you got that right.
I think you took a short position against my intellect and you won.
I was like, uh-oh. Um, so the 29th president of the United States was Warren G. Harding.
Okay.
Um, so this is my bad president series that's casual, so it happens whenever I feel like it. So we're gonna talk about Warren G. Harding and the Teapot Dome scandal. Have you heard of
I absolutely have.
have you really?
Yeah. Teapot Dome was that was, I mean, I think every kid learns that in school.
I don't think I learned it in school, but
Oh,
maybe
wow.
because
Okay.
Illinois is less of an oil place than Texas. Do you have like an oil
Maybe.
history class?
Yeah. We have armadillo class. We have oil
Uh-huh.
history. We have tin can hat class. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. But like you like
Yeah.
kind of open it halfway and then where does that?
Yeah, you just wear a can of beans on your head.
Yeah, love that. Um, okay, cool. I'm glad. I'm excited. So I'm going to tell you about Warren G. Harding. The G stands for
Godfrey.
Gamaliel. I don't know. Gamaliel. I looked up, what the hell is that?
Old-timey names were so stupid.
It's a, I was like, is it like a maiden name of a thing? But Gamaliel is a saint and a doctor in the Bible. I don't know, whatever. That's his middle name. That's what the G stands for.
Okay.
Uh, he was born November 2nd, 1865 in Ohio. He has like the general presidential job life where he like goes to school and like studies law and like does some stuff. Eventually he buys a newspaper in the town of Marion, Ohio called the Marion Star. We'll talk about that later, so like keep that in mind. He went into politics. He was in the Ohio Senate. He was lieutenant governor of Ohio, and he became the Republican candidate for president in 1920. So this is the time when like the candidate wouldn't go to the convention. And guess where the convention was?
Chicago.
Chicago. Good job. He was nominated on the 10th ballot in that. So similarly to like I always mention Lincoln, I'm sure there's many others who it's like not your first choice, but like maybe your second or third, and then it gets down
Yeah.
to like that person. Um, the incidentally, he ran against James Cox, who was a Democrat who had FDR as his vice president, and James Cox was nominated on the 44th ballot at the DNC. Can you imagine if we had like a competitive
That'd be so fun though.
nomination process? It'd be
I think if
so
you're
fun.
there,
I
yeah.
hope
Can you
so. I hope next
imagine,
time's like that or something or whenever. Or just like it'd be fun.
Taylor, we could pick up like smoking cigarettes and it'll be totally justified. We'd just smoke for like a week straight. Wouldn't it be fun?
That sounds like the most fun thing ever is to go there and smoke cigarettes and just hang out with you and just make fun of people.
We have a great time.
I would love it. James Cox is going to lose to Harding by he loses the popular vote by 26.17%, which is like huge.
Yeah.
And it was the worst since 1820. So yeah. But while Harding was running for president, he ran a front porch campaign, which is very smart. He didn't leave his house. He just sat on the front porch and journalists came to him and he told them like what he wanted to do. His big campaign was a return to normalcy because it'd been a pretty crazy couple decades. So you start with Teddy Roosevelt, then Taft, then Wilson. World War I just ended. They're just about to. This is like the same time as the molasses flood, so they're just about to pass prohibition. Women are about to vote for the first time, so like things are kind of riled up. Harding, um, his wife, he married a woman who was 4 years older than him. Her name was Florence, and she is the first woman who got to vote for her husband for president, which is cool.
No way. That's so cool.
Right? Because like we finally were able to vote, and then she was the first person to the election to do. So that was cool. He called her the Duchess. She controlled a lot of his stuff. Um, and she was divorced and had a child when she married him. Um, Harding was not black, which needs to be said because people would like accuse him of being black. And it was like a rumor that he had been. And some people are like, he's our first black president because he had like a little bit of like African American, whatever. He did not. That's not true. It was like
He,
to discredit
he
him
didn't
among
look black,
women.
did he?
No. And later they did DNA on his like descendants and he was not, but
He
people have said that he
looks
was.
he looks like the president of like a golf club resort.
That's great. I wanted to hear what you thought about what he looks like because the book I read, oh, I didn't say this. I read a book on the Teapot Dome scandal and some articles that I'll share with you. But um, people were like, he looks like we think George Washington might have looked like. And you can kind of see it, you know. He has like a strong nose. I
I
think
mean,
they were like he looks presidential because I think
he
he
looks
kind of looks like George
presidential.
Washington. Yeah, yeah. So that was obviously like helpful as well, you know. Um, so he wasn't black, but for the time he was like very like presidential looking, and people really like that. People liked that as well, of course. Makes sense. Um,
He
he
was
was
the Mitt
also
Romney of his time,
he does kind of is a Mitt Romney vibe,
except he won president.
right? Wow.
Got him.
The unexpected dig at Mitt Romney for no reason.
That was
Um,
out of nowhere.
So, Harding had a lot of affairs, like a lot, even for presidential standards. And for example, like he wanted to get to DC before his wife did during inauguration time because his mistress, Nan Britton, was there with their baby. Like he'd already had a baby with his mistress. Like, he had like several of them. And that baby, Elizabeth Ann Britton, later via DNA, they would prove that she was his son, like his daughter, even though he had obviously like he knew that she was his daughter.
That
Um,
is that is one thing I will say about like the olden days that has us be it was so much easier to have like affairs and second
I mean,
families because like who's nobody's gonna take photos and post them. Nobody even
yeah.
has a camera. Nobody even it's all word of mouth.
I mean, I think everybody knew. I
Oh,
don't think it
okay,
was a
well,
secret, but like,
fine.
but because definitely Florence knew, and she was like, not happy about it, obviously, but like, still, you know, supported him in his candidacy and all of that. But no, I think everybody knew. He was also like a big drinker and loved to play poker. And he like in a bad way. Like he'd be at parties and he'd be like too drunk. And people would be like, we have to get the president out of here, you
I've
know?
been there.
Um, which is yeah, but like yeah, exactly. Like we're not the president of the United States. You shouldn't do that. This is also similarly a couple there's some characters that we've talked about before that come in and out of this story. And he the lawyer for Fatty Arbuckle that you talked about a long
Yeah.
time ago will be in this story eventually. I didn't write it down, but like they're involved somehow. But just like Fatty Arbuckle, Harding was at a party where a young woman died. I think that someone like threw a bottle and it hit her in the head, and he had to be like whisked away by Secret Service because he was like he should not have been there. Because also it's prohibition, so like obviously everybody in the government is still drinking, but like you know,
Jeez.
think so. So Harding becomes president. The campaign is like, return to normalcy. We just had a war. It was crazy. Let's like, continue to like, stability, conservative values. He's a Republican, all those things. Um, the economy did have a little bit of a boom, obviously, because this is the 1920s. So this is like the beginning of the 20s, post-war stuff. Everyone
The
is,
golden era, right?
doing pretty well. Yeah. He also had some diplomatic success, getting some like naval arms race treaties signed after the war as well. And he signed a just like some highlights of his presidency. He signed a bill to set a quota on immigration, which is like one of the first like, big beginning of like a more restrictive U.S. immigration policy after the war happened under Harding. But all of that is going to be overshadowed by the Teapot Dome scandal. I don't know, so Teapot Dome is a place in
Wyoming
Wyoming. You should have bet on that one. A
memories.
place, a place in Wyoming where there is oil, and it was part of the U.S. Naval Reserves for oil. T everyone knows that Teddy Roosevelt loved the national parks. So he was like the president who like started a bunch of national parks, got to talk about it. He liked them in like a rich white guy way where he wanted to like go hunting and document every bird he found and stuff them himself. You know, very TR. And Taft, who came after him, set aside land for conservation, but also for naval oil reserves. So just like an area in the United States that we know has oil that is there in case the U.S. needs it in case of emergency, right?
Yeah. It's like the reserves we have. I mean, we still do this.
Yes, I looked it up. I'll tell you about what we do now. Yeah. It's also right after Standard Oil gets cut up into pieces. That happened in 1911. So people are like finding more oil out west, and there's not that like huge monopoly that there was with Standard Oil. It's kind of like there's more people, more oil men in the oil business. Make sense?
Yeah.
So this is the biggest scandal until Watergate that a president had ever done. And essentially going to be there were so many payoffs to the Secretary of the Interior for people to drill for oil on Teapot Dome and some other naval reserves. So some of the oil men who are in this story, so I say oil men, they're just like people who are like a lot of them are like kind of self-starter guys who like went out west and found oil, and a lot of them became part of a group called the Ohio Gang, which operated out of the little house on K Street in DC, a little greenhouse on K Street in DC, where they would meet and like discuss like who they were going to bribe and things like that. So I'll tell you about all of them. But first, the person who was responsible really for getting Harding on the ballot was Jacob Hammond. He was an oil man, very involved in the Republican Party. And he was the one who went around trying to get people to vote for Harding because he knew that he would be able to like get past Harding to be able to drill on this land that he knew had oil. And um, he got in with the Harding family and he was like, I'm gonna get a position in DC. But Jacob Hammond lived with a woman named Clara Smith Hammond. They had the same last name because he had Clara marry his nephew so that they would have the same last name. They wouldn't have problems traveling because he was already married.
I kind of love this guy. How is he the
And
worst president?
no, that wasn't Harding. That was Hammond, the person who got
Oh,
Harding
oh,
elected.
got it.
So
Sorry.
Hammond met Clara when she was 16 and he was 40 and like convinced her to like change her life and like go with him. So he had this woman he was always with, but he was married. And his wife was Florence Harding's second cousin. So his real wife was the second cousin to Florence Harding, who was the wife of the candidate for president, right?
Got it.
And Flo is like, absolutely fucking not. You cannot come to DC and be a part of this cabinet with your mistress. You have to go back to your family, you know?
Makes
So
sense.
Hammond is like, okay, so he's in a hotel with Clara and he tells her that that they need to break up and she shoots him and he dies 4 days later. So he was like basically the instigator for getting Harding president, but he didn't even make it to like the presidential stuff. Later, Clara will be found not guilty and she just kind of got off and lived her life
Good
without
for her.
dude. Um, so later, there's more kind of corruption in the RNC where a man named, um, oh, a man, obviously, Hayes of the Hayes Code. You know this person from
Yeah,
the
yeah,
scale.
yeah.
So he was actually the chairman of the RNC when they were during this election, and then he became Postmaster General of the United States. But he didn't really want it, that job, and because I assume it's just approving mailbox designs. Does your mailbox say approved by the Postmaster General? At least he laughed so hard. I'm like, I can imagine him in his office being like, yes,
Square.
this mailbox is good. So he quit that job and then moved to Hollywood and then established the Hays Code, etc., and all of that
God,
stuff
the
that he did in
history's
Hollywood.
incredible.
Yeah. So he's going to come back and testify during the trial for Teapot Dome to say that he got Liberty bonds as which are like money held in Liberty bond, and which is a as a bribe to pay off some of the RNC's debts to help get Harding elected. So that was all part of it too, and it's all kind of because Harding's kind of a pushover, and people just like know that he will be,
All
you
right.
know.
Well,
So these group of guys who are these oil guys who are hanging out as part of the Ohio gang that I mentioned, um, there are a bunch of them that are going to be I'm going to highlight more than others, but there's Joseph Foraker, Warren Harding, obviously, Harry M. Dougherty, Jesse Smith, George Ramus, and then there's Albert Fall. Albert Fall is the biggest person in this. He's going to be the person that is going to be ultimately convicted of this, of like being the part of the scandal. He got the biggest bribes. He is not the reason we have the term fall guy, but it really could be. In the book, they said that he is the reason we have the term fall guy. But
that's literally what I
Wikipedia says
thought when you first said his name. I was like, okay, he's gonna be the fall guy.
I thought that too. But then Wikipedia says it was used at least 20 years before in like a play, but I think it didn't hurt that his name was Fall. Um, but he's the person who did the leasing. He was Secretary of the Interior, but he didn't want to like help the interior in a conservation way. He was like, he's like, I don't care about how people are gonna get energy in the future. Maybe they'll use the sun. I don't know. Right now we need oil, you know? So he was like trying to
Yeah.
get the oil out. There's Edwin Denby, who would be Secretary of the Navy, Henry Ford Sinclair. He's the head of Mammoth Oil, and so he's one of the people who got the lease for Teapot Dome. And in the end, Sinclair is going to spend about 6 months in jail. Another one is Edward Doheny. He is an oil tycoon who leased the Elk Hills Oil Reserve, just like another oil reserve that was near Teapot Dome. He also just that was fun. He's the guy who quote discovered the La Brea tar pits in LA. He was like,
Doheny is like one of the most famous streets. The that
mm, right.
Gray's Manor, like that's Doheny's estate in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, exactly. So he was like a
Have
big
you been
LA
there?
oil guy. I don't think so.
Oh, it's incredible.
That sounds cool.
It's like Hearst Castle level.
I love doing that. Awesome. Cool. So also Charles Forbes and Thomas Miller. So that's the Ohio gang. So here's what happened. In 1922, Fall leased Teapot Dome to Henry Sinclair of Mammoth Oil. And it's called Teapot Dome because there's a giant rock formation. It doesn't look like a teapot. It's just like rocks, but whatever. Use your imagination. And that's where the oil was. They were the Navy oil reserves. And then this is where I looked up. We do have an oil reserve at 4 sites on the Gulf of Mexico with a capacity of 727 million barrels of crude oil today. So they're able to withdrawal from those sites 4.4 million barrels a day today if they needed it.
From Teapot Dome.
No, 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 just from the four other, this is like today.
Oh,
There's
oh,
four reserves that are around the Gulf of Mexico, and that's how much is in it.
got it.
So it's not in Teapot Dome. Teapot Dome, I think they pretty much
Capped it.
ran dry. Yeah. Um, so fall had gone very suspiciously from a man in debt to a man with a lot of money. Like when I'm rich, like maybe you won't know, but there will be signs. Like he had a big debt on his farm. He paid that off right away. And it turns out that Doheny had given him about 100K, which is about $1.7 million today. And he got gifts in the form of Liberty bonds from Sinclair for another $300,000. So about like $7 million he got
Good for him.
to well, so he had the authority to lease these lands, but he had to like take them away from the Navy and then have competitive bidding to have people lease them. He did none of that. He just had them sign the lease and he put it in his desk drawer and tried not to tell anybody. So
And that's the
you
laziest way
can't
to do something.
you can't take bribes. You can,
Right.
but you shouldn't. Um, so during this time also President Harding came into a lot of money. He had his newspaper, the Marion newspaper that we talked about, sold for like $200,000 when it was like not at all worth that. So that's like kind of a very suspicious thing that might have happened. He also was planning to go on a world tour after his presidency on like a huge yacht for an entire year, all expenses paid by rich people. So like that's suspicious.
This all reminds me of that scene in Goodfellas when they did the Lufthansa heist, and then they're at the bar celebrating. It's like Christmas time,
Hmm.
and Robert De Niro's character is like he sees people pulling up with like brand new Cadillacs and new fur coats. It's like, did I tell you? Did I tell you not to spend $1 on anything? Take it back where you got it. Take it back. It's like the exact same
It's
story.
exactly like that. You're like, oh, now you're wearing a mink coat and your debts are all paid. So weird.
Yeah,
But good for you. So one day, Harding was going to on a trip to Alaska. He was like the first president to go to Alaska, and he was on a boat. And he was talking to Herbert Hoover, who was going to be president later. Um, and he said, quote, if you knew a great scandal in our administration, would you, for the good of the country and the party, expose it publicly, or would you bury it? And Herbert Hoover said that he would say, publish it, get credit for integrity on your side. And Harding said it might be politically dangerous for me. Basically, like, I can't do that
wow.
because people are gonna know that I did some shit. So Harding would have been we would have known a little bit more about his involvement had he not died in office. He
Yeah.
died at the age of 57 on August 2nd, 1923. He had a heart attack. He had a couple days of like feeling shitty. They gave him like caffeine to make him feel better because it was 1923. And eventually he had a heart attack and he died. So Calvin Coolidge is now the president. Cool.
Is that the end?
No,
Oh, you
I'm just telling you.
promise.
I'm just
Got
making sure
it.
that you're caught up. It's not the end, but we're close to the end. So Calvin Coolidge is going to be president now. He knew less about the scandals, but he didn't want it to like tarnish his presidency as well. So he allowed it to go to a Senate committee hearing to Senator John B. Kendrick. He agreed that that Sinclair should not have gotten the rights like just like so easily and like by himself without having any any competition. So they have a hearing and a lot of like there are a couple of guys who die by suicide. There's one guy, I think Doheny's son dies in like a really weird murder suicide with his friend. So a couple like suspicious things happen kind of like during
That
it.
happened. That happened at Gray's Manor. That's
Oh
part of the
yes,
tour that
yes.
he died there.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So definitely feels like a little weird that that happened during that time. The Senate investigation will go on for several years, and Albert Fall is going to be convicted of accepting bribes. He's the first former U.S. cabinet member to be imprisoned for crimes committed while he was in office. And then I think Henry Sinclair is also going to go to jail, but he has a good time. He gets to like go to like a rich person jail, and he gets to be a
Yeah.
pharmacist.
Yeah,
so he gets to drink all the time because
nice.
the place is full of pharmaceutical booze. Um, so yeah, so I think that is it because Fall was convicted. He went to jail. Harding's reputation was then tarnished because of it, but we'll never really know exactly how much he knew or like any of those things because he died and he was unable to tell anybody. But it sounds like it's pretty suspicious that he had, all these guys around him who were just getting richer and richer off of this stuff. Teapot Dome then stayed idle for about 50 years. In 1976, it went back into production, and it is in 2015, the U.S. Department of Energy sold it to um, another resources group, but I think it has a lot less stuff in it right now than it did
But so
before.
so why is he the worst president?
He's not. I'm not saying he's worst president. I'm just saying that I'm doing bad presidents. So Harding like allowed this scandal to happen under his nose while his friends bribed and got rich.
Didn't
He was just trying,
Halliburton get a no bid contract to rebuild Iraq?
probably.
Like I assume this is just how business is done. Like I
Well,
don't
I mean,
actually.
it is and it isn't. Like it is, but like it shouldn't be. Like I think that's the point. Like as a Secretary of Interior, you should not be taking $6 million from oil people to give them the naval oil reserves to make $500 million. You know,
Yeah,
you shouldn't
yeah.
do that.
I mean, under that logic, then Dick Cheney should also be in jail.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, we agree. Dick Cheney should be in. Okay, yeah. All right, I see your point. We're on the same page. He's still
Right.
alive, Taylor.
He is like he doesn't have a pulse, right? We've
He's had
talked
like
about this.
four hearts.
Um, I don't even know.
Well,
Is he like 300 years old?
I mean, he's got to be up there.
He's he's 83. God, I don't know. He feels older.
He seemed like he was 83 when he was vice president.
No, totally.
Um,
Weird.
so what do we do now with the oil reserves?
I think they're just sitting there in case we need them. But like, you can probably like regulate them in case of an oil crisis, but I don't think they've done that. But I think it's like supposed to be if we need it for like war tomorrow,
Didn't
right?
Trump release a ton of oil reserves?
I don't know.
That sounds familiar. I think Trump did at some point. It was like a COVID thing, or I forgot what happened, but I remember like that was like the first time I was like, oh wow, we're actually using it.
Yeah.
So fun. All right, well, that's a fun little man. Dick Cheney just chugging along with his like 15 heart attacks. It's like God keeps trying to bring him home, and he just keeps fighting it.
I don't think it's God is bringing him home.
Yeah.
I think it was on American Dad. Because the dad works at Stan works at the FBI, and they like found a cell phone, and they were like, "Oh, who's calling?" And they were like, "Oh, it's oh, look at the recent calls," and it's like, "Oh, they called the devil. They called da da da." Like, "Oh, it's supposed to be Dick Cheney's phone." Like, that time.
I love that we have like a famous bad baddie. Um,
Yeah, lots of them.
but
There's lots of them. Um, but yeah, this was a fun one, and um, yeah, it's funny that like, Hayes is there. There's going to be like, um, Calvin Coolidge is going to, really distance himself from it. But then like, there's a lot of future presidents in this story too. Like FDR was running against him. He talked to Herbert Hoover. So like all these people are just kind of like lifting each other up even in different ways. Oh, you know what I forgot to say is that there was an election for Calvin Coolidge during the trial that Coolidge did win, but the Democrat that he was running against, I know that Eleanor Roosevelt really wanted Al Smith to be president during this time, but he was too Catholic for people and he was too New York for like the South. But one of the things that Eleanor Roosevelt would do was drive around when they were campaigning with a big teapot on top of her car. I'm gonna find a photo of this.
that's kind of fun.
To remind people about it.
That is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So I like your president history. There's such a vast like there's this middle tier that's like totally forgettable. Um, but it obviously had huge implications. So
Yeah, totally. Like, I mean,
I want to do a
um,
Truman one because all I know about Truman is that he dropped the atomic bomb. But what else did he do? Did he do anything besides that?
um, that's a really good question. I think so, but I don't know. I would love to learn. I feel like I learned about him a little bit. Um, but yeah, I'd love to learn more. I can't find a picture of this teapot car for Eleanor. If anyone has one, give me a
That
call.
is a mid-journey question.
It is. Oh, you're totally right. Oh my God. It'll probably be very, very close to it. Very close to it. Also like Anna Roosevelt Longworth, who is Annie is PR's daughter. She's gonna like be at all the Teapot Dome like hearings and stuff. She was just there to like be gossipy, which is fun. That's a lot.
This does feel
That's
like a
fun.
really fun time to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you for sharing. And congratulations for keeping your $1,000.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The problem is you
Um,
know me too well to ever ask me a question
it's
that,
not like you would ever like take that bet. You're not gonna give me $1,000. I was gonna give you $1,000.
yeah, it's true.
So
It would have been unfair, and it would have been unfair on all counts.
I don't even think that's exactly what betting is. I just
That's not what betting is. No, no, no.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Sweet. Okay. Well, do you have anything to read out before we wrap?
the last just one thing that we had mentioned Irish names because I mentioned my friend Seamus and my friend Morgan said her favorite Irish name is Siobhan. And I watched this movie or this show called Bodkin on Netflix. It's not very good. It's about a podcast and like kind of hurt my feelings because it's like, oh yeah, like you're um like podcasts are stupid, anyone can do them, which fine, I get that that's it, fine, but like it's also not just not very good. The story's not very good. Like we watched 7 episodes and we were 20 minutes from the end last night and I was like, I'm gonna go to bed, I don't care. But it's about a festival in Ireland called the Samhain Festival that's spelled Samhain, so just another way
Sam
that yeah,
Sam. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Seamus is better.
yeah, yeah, so fun.
Sweet.
um
Well, please, we'll sign off with please write to us at doomnflpod@gmail.com. Find us on all the socials at doomnflpod. Taylor is doing an inventory of everybody who is a subscriber, and if you're not on the list, then she's going to personally send you a very nasty letter.
I did personally thank everyone who is both my follower and our follower. My
And then
personal
you're
fan.
also talking to your rattlesnake lady to ship a rattlesnake to everybody that's not following, right?
Ooh, yeah, good call.
There
Good
you go.
call. Um, and the irony is they will never listen to this.
They'll never know, but they can't
They'll never
prosecute
know.
us.
Um, I guess I can enact my revenge upon them.
There you go. There
That
you
I do
go.
have a revenge list after all.
See how
People
easy
who
it
don't
is?
support me. There you go. But if you support us, yes, please do an Apple podcast review would be awesome. Stars are good. Words would be awesome as well. Go to our like, engage with our socials, engage with our YouTube. If you just like subscribe and like things, like that's really, really helpful. So please, please do that.
If you're hearing breathing on my mic, it's Luna breathing in my face. So apologies. Sweet. Anything else, Taylor? Taylor
I
froze.
didn't hear
So
it.
I'm gonna go ahead and say say
Nope.
nope.
That's it. Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah,
I'm gonna go
I'm
cut
back, I
off.
think. We're fine. Okay.
Alrighty. I'm gonna cut things off.